What's up everyone, welcome back to Lunar Arcade. Today's episode is all about Legends of Heroes, Trails of Cold Steel 3, and this is part of my ongoing journey through the Trails series where I'm playing through and reviewing each entry as I go. I actually started with Cold Steel because at the time it felt like the most accessible entry point, and honestly I was already deep into the series when Trails in the Sky First Chapter remake was announced. So instead of stopping, I'm sticking with this path, finishing out Cold Steel and eventually circling back to the beginning as those remakes roll out. With second chapter now officially announced, this feels like the perfect time to keep pushing forward and work my way back up in order. If you're new here, I cover game reviews, hidden gems, RPGs, and gaming deals. So if that sounds like your thing, hit that subscribe button and stick around. Now let's break this down, starting with the story. Quick warning, there will be minor spoilers for Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2. I'll keep things brief and avoid spoiling Cold Steel 3 itself, but if you haven't played the earlier games, just keep that in mind. Trails of Cold Steel 3 takes place shortly after the events of Cold Steel 2, following the aftermath of the Northern War. There's actually an anime that bridges the gap between 2 and 3, something I didn't realize until after I had already started playing. I'll be honest, the anime isn't great, but I still recommend watching it if you're curious, because it does help clarify some of the references and political context that Cold Steel 3 assumes you already understand. This time around, you once again play as Rean Schwarzer, but his role has changed significantly. Rean is now an instructor at the newly established branch campus of Thor's military academy. Instead of being a student, you're now guiding a new generation of Class 7, characters who come from different backgrounds, regions, and ideologies. What I really like here is how the game balances continuity and evolution. The story is clearly connected to everything that came before it, the organizations, the political tensions, the long-running mysteries, but it's also moving forward in a new direction with a fresh cast, new stakes, and a broader scope. You still feel the weight of the past games, but Cold Steel 3 does a great job of setting up what's coming up next. Most of my playtime was split between PC and Steam Deck. On my PC, I'm running a Ryzen 5900X paired with a Radeon 7800 XT, and performance was flawless.
That's a lot of nuts!
No stutters, no crashes, everything ran exactly how you'd expect. On the Steam Deck, performance was also surprisingly strong. I did have to turn down some shadow quality a bit, but once I did that, I was able to maintain a solid 60 FPS with no issues. I also want to compare this briefly to the Nintendo Switch version. Based on my experience and what I've seen in other reviews, the Switch version can look very blurry at times due to resolution drops. On Steam Deck, that really isn't an issue. The image stays much clearer overall. This is the first Cold Steel game that really feels like a major visual leap, since it's no longer designed around PS3 or PS Vita limitations. The character models have been completely redone, and while animations are still a bit stiff, it's clearly an improvement. You can tell the developers are learning as they go, and that matters. An improvement still is an improvement. I really like how conversations now sometimes zoom in cinematically instead of sticking to a constant over-the-shoulder camera. It helps sell emotional moments and lets you appreciate the updated models more. The world itself can feel a bit bland at times, but the story, combat, and character interactions are what really carry the experiences. When everything comes together, it works. The music is solid, nothing that completely blew me away, but it fits the tone well. I especially love when you revisit familiar areas and hear themes from earlier games, reinforcing that sense of continuity across the series. Gameplay is where Trails of Cold Steel 3 really shines, and it builds smartly on the systems introduced in earlier entries while expanding them in meaningful ways. Starting with combat, the battle UI has been refined and feels more intuitive than ever. Commands are now tied directly to button combinations, holding L or R and pressing A, B, X, or Y, which makes battles flow faster once you get used to it. One of the biggest additions is the Brave Point system. Brave Points allow you to activate powerful abilities tied to characters, even ones who aren't currently active in your party. These abilities range from stat boosts, speed increases, healing, CP recovery, and even bonus break damage. The break system itself is extremely satisfying. If you can shatter an enemy's break gauge, they're stunned temporarily and can't act, often canceling whatever attack they were about to use. That layer of strategy kept me constantly engaged and thinking ahead. Super attacks are back and still look great, especially when Rean enters Ogre mode, where his hair turns white, his eyes turn red, and his attacks gain altered animations that visually reflect his transformation. It's a great callback to earlier games and still feels impactful. Just like in previous entries, finishing battles with dual character attacks triggers extra dialogue between those characters. I always try to experiment with different party combinations just to see those interactions, because it adds a lot of personality and payoff. One thing I really want to stress, and this applies just like it did in previous Trails games, is that you should revisit towns and locations often. As story events progress, the game will naturally move time forward, sometimes to the afternoon, evening, or night. And NPC dialogue changes constantly. Characters will comment on recent events, political shifts, or personal story beats, and sometimes they'll even reward you with items if you talk to them at the right time. There isn't a traditional day-night cycle where you control the clock, but as the story advances, the world updates around you. Because of that, it's very easy to miss things. I honestly recommend using a guide if you don't want to miss key items or interactions. While there is usually a vendor later on that can sell some items you missed, it's far better to grab what you need the first time around. Some of these items are important for later game content, and missing them can be frustrating if you don't realize it until much later. So take your time, talk to everyone, don't rush the story unless you're okay with missing things. Another major gameplay shift is the emphasis on your role as an instructor. You're not just fighting, you're teaching. You take your students on trips, guide them through missions, and help them grow both in combat and as characters. Soldat battles are back in a big way, and this time they're far more expansive instead of only controlling Green and Valimar. You're now also commanding your students, each of whom has their own soldats. These battles feel much closer to standard party combat now, complete with combos, coordinated attacks, and tactical decision making. It honestly feels like a natural evolution of the system rather than a side feature. The Soldat character models have also seen a huge graphical upgrade. They look sharper, more detailed, and far more impressive in motion compared to earlier entries, which really helps sell the scale of these encounters. The orbment system has also expanded. You can now equip dual master quartz, allowing characters to inherit abilities from multiple setups, which dramatically increases build variety and strategic depth. The partner system from Cold Steel 2 returns and feels more refined. As you fight alongside a linked partner, your bond improves, unlocking follow-up attacks, defensive assists, healing options, extra turns, and more, all of which can completely change how a fight plays out. Despite some lingering stiffness in animations, movement has been improved overall. You can even see Reen's long jacket subtly react as he runs or sprints, which is a small but appreciated detail. This detail also applies to other characters when you switch out who's running out in the field. Yuna deserves a special mention. Her weapon system is genuinely cool. She can switch her batons between close-range melee mode and ranged gun-like attacks that hit small areas. It's a simple idea, but it adds a lot of tactical flexibility. Campus life also feels fresh this time around. Being an instructor at a branch campus gives you a new perspective compared to the original academy, and it helps the game feel more distinct rather than repetitive. I also really like how technology has evolved in the world. Arcus units now function more like cell phones. Characters use laptops, and it's cool seeing the world progress alongside the story. Despite some stiff animations and a world that can feel a bit plain visually, Trails of Cold Steel 3 absolutely won me over. The combat system, character growth, emotional callbacks, and long-term storytelling are what make this game special. Seeing characters from earlier game entries grown up, changed, and living new lives is incredibly rewarding. Because of all that, I'm giving Trails of Cold Steel 3 a 9 out of 10. If you're looking for an RPG that rewards emotional investment and long-term storytelling, I still highly recommend getting into the Trails series. Ideally, start from the very beginning, but if that feels overwhelming, Cold Steel 1 is still a solid entry point. Let me know in the comments what you think of Trails of Cold Steel 3 or where you started in the Trails series. I'd love to hear your experiences. If you enjoyed this review, like the video, subscribe to Lunar Arcade, and turn on notifications for more game reviews, hidden gems, and RPG coverage. Thanks for watching. This is Lunar, signing off.